just want to say how very encouraging for me it is to see this work developing in this way. Can't tell you. Thank you very, very much. And also very well expressed. And you're a fantastic, present in English. I know you speak the language very well, but with such clarity, quite something. Thank you. So we've got 10 minutes questions. 9 minutes maybe. Any questions? I'm going to ask one then. I'll ask one. On the conditions of looking for music to help with sleep, obviously you have the conditions of low tempo, slow tempo. You have a stability, a lack of turbulence. And I wonder also whether you have worked with harmonicity. In other words, the extent to which it conforms to... in the piece that you played, it was entirely harmonic apart from one leading note towards the end, but the rest of it could have been basically a harmonic series. Is that of interest to you?
Definitely. This has been investigated also in some studies, both on arousal, but mostly with regard to emotion. And yeah, like you said, harmony is related to relaxation, but mostly, sometimes when you study emotion, you look at the arousal dimension and you look at valence. Yes. And harmony is more related to valence, to positive emotions, than to arousal in itself.
Yes, exactly.
But that would, of course, also be of importance with regard to sleep.
Yes, and there are also two considerations, aren't there? Because on the one hand, there was all the work that people like John Klosterboer have done on sort of harmonic progression, expectation, and so on. Then there was the moment in time, the harmonicity of the moment that seems to be quite important. I mean, a much simpler neurophysiological, physiological function, facial gyrus doing its work, and simple signals of that kind. That seems to be an important area. Yeah. Yes, there we are. Some questions.
Thank you very much. Did you find any variation in, sorry, I presume you presented in your graph showing the impact of the music on your intervention group. I presume that was an average of the group. Did you find great variation within that group?
Yes, we did find some variation. In that way, I do not believe that music is it's not like a wonder cure, because to some it was really effective. Some almost achieved, came close to the cutoff score of good sleep quality, and others experienced a reduction, but not very much. So there's definitely some individual differences at play also.
I think this point about individual variability is a very important one. Because of the heterogeneous nature of the sample, there's no magic bullet, as it were. No one piece of music will help everybody. So I think as we come to understand these effects and their effects on the brain, and I should say that as part of this new study, the randomized control trial that we're doing, we are planning to actually scan their brains and to look at those networks that I showed, to find out what it is that is really, as opposed to sticking an electrode in people's brain, is what it is that is singing the mind electric, to borrow a quote from Whitman.
And no composers are going to want to write this music for you, are they really? Because they would get a reputation for sending people to sleep.
That's true. Another quick comment. I think the voluntary nature of this is in its favor. People are saying there's no magic bullet, that's bad. No, it's good. The thing that a human being, individual, consents to respond to, that's a great thing about music. Can't force it down anybody's throat. It will only have its effect if you want it to. And I think I regard this as a strength of music therapy. Sorry, the next question.
Hi. I was actually speaking to Kira before we came in, and one of the things, before I realised what she did and what she was studying, etc., I was asking her about the timings of the study, specifically relating to the military and PTSD. So your study starts once you've diagnosed the PTSD, but are there any mechanisms or studies prior to that? Because when they sign on the dotted line, is there anything that takes a measure at that point so that you have a starting point when you come to take any further measures?
I think that is maybe regarding to the brain. If you do it like longitudinally, if you test them before they are deployed.
Currently, there are no studies of this, but I think early intervention is clearly key here. As Hugh rightly pointed out, if it takes 13 years to self-report, and yet, of course, we can see the relatives can see these things happening very early, I think early intervention would be absolutely key. But of course, it's easier to show a large effect later on, just as we've seen when I showed you the deep brain electrodes. At the moment, we only operate after about 10 years, but there's now very good evidence that, in fact, although it is risky to do anything to the brain, if we did it after 2 years, we'd probably get much better results long term.
The underlying principle with controlling pain, if you recall that quadrant diagram, all aspects of it, is the earlier the correct intervention takes place, the less likely you are to proceed to chronic pain of any sort. I think that principle applies across the board.
Yes, yes.
I noticed that you used an electronic music, and I wondered if you'd experimented in the difference between music played on an instrument with human expression and the sort of expressionlessness of electronic music.
Right now we haven't done any studies on that, but we are also planning actually a study more into the musical features to look into what parameters are most important, and also taking into account familiarity, how well do you know the music, and also preferences, how well do you like the music, because to address also the individual differences and to be able to look more into musical and acoustical features.
I think there was a question at the end there. Yeah.
Hello. I sort of related to, I think that was Camilla, was it? A question about what you used, the music you used there had birds and waves with it. Now, it seemed to me that there you were presenting not just entirely music, but something that could produce a picture. I was thinking of Stefan Kolsch's thing, I don't know whether he's here, about how if another thing is presented, a picture or another medium, so on, is presented with the music, it actually makes a difference to the response, and actually increases the response. So I wondered if there was, not questioning your study at all, which I think is great, but I just felt that there was that factor that actually might affect the results.
Yeah, I believe you're right. There were nature sounds in this music, and as there are also results showing a close link between music and imagery. So this may also be of importance here, especially with regard to the distractive effects of the music. That if you can engage both the auditory and the visual, even though you may be lying with your eyes closed to fall asleep, this may reinforce the effect of the music.
Yes. I mean, on the pictures I showed from North Uganda, the boy soldier I was working with, I was actually using musical sounds to stimulate movement of the charcoal he was using. That's a time-honored method in art and music therapy, going back to people like Fiedel Dicker and Terezin were already experimenting with this in the 1930s. Yes.
It looks as if one more question. Is that?
No, I think that.
Is that?
My question really follows on from those last few comments. It was really about the use of voice, and did you consider when you were choosing purely vocal voice, no words, but using the sound of the human voice?
Sorry, I couldn't.
Using voice as opposed to instrumental or sounds of nature, the impact of the voice, had you considered that and discarded it?
No, for this we chose instrumental music to avoid words. But yeah, with regard to, for instance, lullabies are often sung, so with the voice. So that would be interesting to look further into, definitely.
But of course, the whole neuroscience field of actually looking into both the producing of voice So what it is like to sing is still hampered by the fact that most people have to lie down, and they are in an environment that constantly go ding 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 ding. So, but we have ways, I think, of actually exploring this in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Real